All right, everyone. Welcome to the show. Excited to be here. Thank you for checking in. And this show is one that I say this a lot. I get excited about guests coming on, and they're sincere, and I am. I'm excited to talk to every guest that I have on. But tonight is a special guest, and I've followed her for a long, long time, and they're just, to me, the different things that align with who I am as a person and the teachings that I've done for my clients and my followers. This one is, I don't like using the word perfect, but it's about as perfect as you can get. Lee is an incredible woman, and I'm really excited about this conversation because, as you'll see, as we have this conversation, you're going to see just how incredible a person she is. So before we start, I introduce who you are, introduce who she is. If you could just comment below whether you're watching this live or if it's as a replay, and then by all means, please type in where you're checking in from. So I always love to hear where my followers are from. But let me introduce this amazing guest that I have tonight. Her name is Lee Milteer, and she's an internationally known and celebrated entrepreneur, visionary, best-selling author, award-winning professional speaker, TV personality, and an intuitive business mentor. Lee provides business and success advice and resources to nearly 250,000 people around the world. She is the founder of Millionaire Smarts coaching program, which supplies coaching for other coaches and businesses, and I've taken lots of great notes from her. Lee hosted the America's Premier Experts TV show, which was aired on NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox affiliates. Lee is also host Untamed Success, Positive TV, a monthly web-based TV show. Lee speaks all over North America and Europe in conventions, private companies, and entrepreneurial and niche market events. Lee is a recognized award-winning, best-selling audio and video author whose produced has been endorsed by my tongue is numb tonight. Nightingale Conan, Cybervision, Career Track, and GKIC. Lee has also written 11 books, and we're going to be talking about a number of them. So Lee, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, I am really, really excited about this. And before we got on here, I was talking to you about that conversation I was seeing where you introduced me to this concept of cognitive dissonance. And wow, that has opened up a whole new world for me. And I really, really appreciate that. But on this show, Lee, we like to talk about, the guests that I have on, we like to talk about the hero's journey. And you've had a number of them. And I would just like to, talk about a little bit about where you come from, where your background is, some events that have happened that has led you to be the person that you are today, so that people can get to know just how amazing you really are.
Well, thank you. I've been around a while. I came from a little place in Virginia, rural Virginia, called Chuckytuck. That's a real name. It was an Indian village name. I grew up 1.5 miles from the nearest secondary road on a big ranch, 110 acres. I was firstborn. My parents wanted a boy. And when you're a rancher and a farmer, you want sons. So I was pretty much raised as a boy. I could drive a tractor at 4. I was a sharpshooter by 7. I could kick your ass by the time I was 12. I was a very aggressive kid. I had my first business when I was 12 years old. I had 37 people working for me in the fields of Chuckytuck, Virginia, chopping peanuts, and my nickname was One More Row because I only had rest and water to motivate them to go across these huge fields. Mm-hmm. And so I worked harder than all of them, and I would be out in front of them. And when we would get to the end of the row, they'd all want to sit down and stop. And I'd go, no, one more row, one more row, one more row, and we'll stop. Of course, we've hardly ever stopped because I would say that every time. However, I was able to, at 12 years old, literally outbeat all the other foremans who had worked there for years. So I had a very difficult childhood. My father was a wonderful, complicated human being, but a raging alcoholic. And there was a lot of anger and difficulty in my life. Mm-hmm. So all those difficulties allowed me to be a very strong businesswoman because no meant nothing to me because everything that I ever asked for, they said no to. So I learned to negotiate. I learned to, write a pretty much good sales letter verbally. So I didn't have a normal childhood whatsoever. But as I wrote about it extensively in my book called Reclaim the Magic. And when the editor was reading this, she said, you really shouldn't put this chapter in your book. And I went, why? And she goes, your childhood was so difficult and depressing. And I said, but you don't understand. That is the core of why I am successful today, is because even though I had this difficult childhood, we all make these decisions in life. And some people make the decision to be victims, and some people decide that they're going to break the chain of pain and move on and make something of themselves. Right. And I was the one who raised my hand that I'm going to make some money, because money is security and money is freedom. And so Dan Kennedy recently wrote about me that I was the least likely person to ever become successful, because I had no money, no mentors, no support, and living in the middle of nowhere. And he said it's your sheer tenacity of taking it upon yourself to learn and to go out into the world that literally made you successful. And that really is true.
Yeah, and you talked about having I love what you put there. No meant nothing to me, and
still doesn't.
Right, obviously.
Still doesn't. Yeah. No, it's just a pause in the conversation.
Right, and it's the meaning that we attach to these things, right? And it's not the no, it's the story that you tell yourself on the other side of being told no that affects whether you move forward or not. And having, I think it's Tony Robbins that says, if you'd said being basically a victor or a victim based on the circumstances that you're raised in, but it's also the tenacity came out of that because of the way you were raised. And is that an accurate statement?
Yes, and it was something that it really came from me, that this desire to be free from the shackles of oppressive living and being poor. And they were very old-fashioned, that women's place was in the home, and that was not my destiny. And the only way that I lived my entire high school in the guidance counselor's office, because when I was going to high school, they were basically saying, girls should be nurses, which never was going to happen, or right. teachers, or all these things. And I'm like, I can't don't want to do any of those things. But when I was in the 11th grade, they came in school, in the 12th grade, they came in and said, how many of you would like to go out and sell the yearbook? Nobody raised their hand but me. And wow. I went out and sold the yearbook and realized I have a talent. I could sell. And then I was a rock and roll disc jockey. I lied to the radio station, told them I had graduated from high school when I was still in high school. I had a full-time job in high school as a rock and roll wild woman disc jockey.
Wow. You got some stories. That's great. That's great.
Again, it's just a matter of what is it you want in life, and then do something about it. And even if you failed, you learn something, and you may start off in one direction, you'll end up in another direction, but it's the progress of you just going forward with this optimistic, sure, I can learn to do that. Sure, I can do that. Absolutely, I can do that. And just march on.
So back then, obviously, as we get older and we get a little more wise, a little bit more aware, we learn some things about ourselves. Looking back on that younger version of you, the tenacity that you had and stuff like that, and you were saying there's something inside of you that was driving it. How aware of that was it when you were in that time in your life? Were you aware of what was actually driving you, as opposed to looking back on it now?
I think, Jeff, I wanted to get the hell out of Dodge, and I was very motivated that I had to figure out how to do that. And when I was in high school, I somehow finagled myself to be a librarian helper for lots of reasons. Primarily, the number one reason is I could get out of class, which I hated because I was smart and school bored me. Second was there were books in that library that I love books. And so I read Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Believing, and Psycho-Cybernetics at 16 years old.
Wow.
And this opened up a world, particularly the book, The Magic of Believing, because this book is metaphysical. Even though Think and Grow Rich is metaphysical, people, for the most part, don't realize it's metaphysical. And those books gave me like a beacon of light of, oh my Lord, I can do this. And I didn't care what all the prejudice was of Southern blonde young girls. And I didn't care about what other people thought. I was really determined to be I was determined to be wealthy. And not to marry it, because I certainly wasn't inheriting it, but to literally create freedom for myself so that I never had to be encumbered again with anybody's trauma. I wanted to be free. And that means you have to figure out how to use your talents and your abilities. And one thing I can do is communicate and talk. And so I won all the speech contests in high school. It's the only thing I ever did well. In fact, in the 7th grade, in my first speech, the teacher actually said afterwards, and she didn't even mean to be funny, but she actually said, "Oh my God, you actually do something well." So my childhood was very interesting, but if I could go back and tell that young person today anything, it would be do exactly what you did.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah, and it's funny because you're sitting, looking at how your life was, and here are the things that you were naturally gifted at if you were speaking and stuff like that, and look at where you're at today. I mean, international speaker and things like that, and it's just amazing, coming out of where. But you said something that I wanted to ask you about, because you're all about performance and law of attraction and teaching metaphysical stuff. So a lot of people, and me doing hypnosis and working with unconscious a lot, is hearing that thing, well, you got to focus on where you want instead of where you don't want to be. So when you started out, you didn't want this, and
correct.
And that really drove you to get into where you're at now. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sometimes I think you have to, so I do a lot of coaching, and one of the things I always ask people is, tell me very clearly what you don't want. Because a lot of people just are not, and this, you work with people, they're very vague about what they want and what they don't want. I want you to be absolutely really clear about what you do not want. Right. Because now we want to create a life that doesn't have that in it. And then once you can clearly say, this is, clearly what I don't want, it's a lot easier to clearly say what you do want. My life has been a seeker. I am always seeking. I'm always learning. Nothing makes me happier than learning. I mean, I get up between 4 and 4:30 in the morning, and I do all these rituals. I pray, and I do scripting for myself, meaning write out my future story as my life is going to turn out. So I'm projecting into the future. I do it every morning of my life. Oh, I do great. It 5 years ahead. 5 years ahead. So I'm getting ready to go to Japan for a month to work this October, but I started thinking about this 5 years ago. That someone was going to invite me to Japan, that I would work in Japan, and then I would do this big trip around Japan and go to Hong Kong and China and so forth and so on. And I wrote about it 5 years ago for a long time. Then I forgot it. And then it came true. But I also read. I mean, I get up in the morning and I just read, and I'm so excited about stuff. And my husband gets to breakfast and he always goes, "Well, what did you read that you're so excited about today?" And then I just get up in the morning. I'm just so happy to learn. I love learning.
So what do you, because you said you hated school.
I
right?
hated school. Hated school.
And now here you're this ferocious learner. What's the difference?
School was boring. I'm not a person who can be trapped. I am not a person you can corral. I'm a person, I like my freedom. I like to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And school felt like prison, and it was slow. And I don't know, I did not like school.
Yeah. And I same way. I mean, I had to beg the school board to let me graduate. It's just,
I had to beg also. I skipped school so much
yeah.
that they actually said to me, if you miss one more day, you won't graduate. I will not miss any more days.
Yeah. That's,
Trust
yep.
me, they wanted me out as much as I wanted to be out.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you had some pretty big challenges in your life. And that's one thing that, on this show that I want people to understand is that we look at people that have reached the success that you've had, and they don't understand that there's a journey that got them there. There's things that they got introduced to, parts of themselves that they would have never in their wildest dreams ever imagined. So can we talk about what, like when you talked about like your first husband, right? The situation that happened with that, because, I think, and that's one of the things that I want people to get from this show is to always understand there's hope. There's always somebody that has been through something that you can't even imagine possible going through, and they still made it through, and they made it, and be able to carry on and they became stronger because of it. So can you talk about that event?
Sure. I was in the radio business at the time, and my husband was a general manager of a radio station and part owner of a radio station. And he was building a restaurant. And as he had bought this land, he had to tell the existing owner or the person who had been renting the land as parking for another restaurant that in 2 years he was taking the land back and they'd have to find other parking. So this guy that he told this to was really, truly mentally ill. He owned the restaurant. He was an alcoholic. He kept threatening to kill me, burn down our house, and kill him. And I had gone to the police about this, and the police, you watch TV. There's nothing we can do until they actually break the law. And so at the time, I was a professional photographer, and we had been traveling around the world doing a lot of landscape photography. I had just come back from doing the Rolling Stones concert. And I had a dark room outside of the house, and it was Christmas Eve, and I was not in the house. And when I came home, my husband had been shot in the face at our front door by a hired killer who the other restaurant owner had hired because we were taking his parking back. And for the next year, Jeff, I was a mess. I could not function. I could not eat. I couldn't hardly take care of myself. I honestly did not leave the house. If people hadn't brought me food, I would have starved to death. I did not think I would survive it. People finally had actually an intervention for me and came and sit down and said, you have to come back to life. And I was about, I don't know, 6 blocks from a really good library. And so my big ventures out of the house was just going to the library because this is books. I love books. So I immersed myself for another 6 months in nothing but prosperity books. And when I tell you nothing but prosperity books, I mean, I can quote prosperity books. And I realized at the time that I needed to do something with my life and not just what I had been doing. And so that saved me because grief is a horrible thing. Yeah. And everybody has to deal with it differently. I felt like I had lost my soulmate and that I would never find security and comfort again. And that's not true. I did find another man who truly loves me, who I've been happily married to for 14 years. And, life goes on. I will also tell you that as hard as it was, it now feels like a story. See, we all have stories. Right. And at some point, Jeff, I had to stop telling the story because my life became the widow story.
Okay.
Of my husband got murdered. And that engulfed me. And so I would just warn everybody that no matter what bad things happen to you, there's a period of time that you will need to go through to grieve it and integrate it and learn from whatever that was. But after a while, you cannot let that story take over your life. And because I'm not a natural victim,
Right.
I don't like to be seen as a victim. I actually stopped telling the story for a very long time. And so it's a long time ago that this happened. But when I say it feels like a story,
Mm-hmm.
so you know who Bill Glazer is. So Bill Glazer was my partner at GKIC for a long time. And he always used to say, in my previous life, and it certainly wasn't talking about reincarnation with Bill Glazer. so anyway, I love Bill. So anyway, I now refer to it as my previous life because it was something that happened to me. It made me very strong. It also made me realize, Jeff, that I'm never afraid of anything because nothing can be as bad as that, and I survived it.
Right.
Nothing can be as bad as you coming home and the police are at your house and your husband's dead at the front door with his face shot off. Wow. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you get up and move on.
Yeah, and it's thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate that because it's such a powerful story, and how I don't know if you're familiar with who Bo Eason is.
I'm not.
Yeah, Bo Eason is all about the power of your story, and he was interviewing a psychiatrist once of really understanding the power of your story, and she says there has to come a place where you actually embrace every component of it, but then you let it go so that just exactly what you were saying, it doesn't own you anymore and you don't become that, but you recreate it. And, for me, when I was studying my hypnosis and the NLP and stuff, is the cell memory of what keeps things alive inside of us, and I mean, how many times, 7 years you completely regenerate? I mean, you are not that person anymore, and just using it, like you said, that's the worst thing I've ever gone through. So the other story I would like to ask you about that I think is just incredible, because I don't know Dan personally, but I've read a lot of his stuff and would love to talk about that conversation that you basically sat down and said, you need me, of how you walk, because, most people see Dan as he's just this, and as I've studied him more and more and got his programs and gone through it, he's a very caring guy, but he puts off this persona of just being this rough and tumble kind of guy. But how
Dan Kennedy, yes?
Yes, Dan Kennedy.
Dan Kennedy, yes.
And how you went in and just basically owned it and said, you need to hire me. So can you talk about how, because I think it's incredible, you just you're owning who you were and just walked in and basically saying, no, it's not an option for you. So I'd love to have you share that with my followers.
Okay, so when I decided to become a professional speaker, I had absolutely no money and had never taken a course on speaking and really didn't know squat about it. And I was in commercial real estate, and I really didn't like commercial real estate at all. Mm-hmm. And I had just sold a building and had enough money to pay the rent for a couple more months. And I said, I'm done with this. And I just went to the printer and I had cards printed up that said Lee Milteer, professional speaker. So that was my whole foray into the professional speaking business.
And you had not spoke yet at this point?
Never. And so, but I was just, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is I fail. So what? I move on. So I borrowed money and clothes to go to Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, actually. And I remember I joined the National Speakers Association, and we were staying at the Camelback Inn, and it was very expensive. And I had no idea I was going to even pay for this, but I got a credit card, I had the clothes, and I'm going to the NSA, and it's okay. It's great. However, across the hall, there's this sign that said Dan Kennedy, the real speaking business. So he piggybacked. He was very smart. He was in NSA, but he did something totally separate from NSA. So I signed up for this thing, and oh my gosh, I'd never seen Dan Kennedy. I had no idea who he was. I'm sitting in the back of the room, and it was like word candy. I was just mesmerized by him. I could not believe that I was just like, oh my God, this is who I came all the way to Arizona to hear. And so he said at the end of his speech that at the back of the room, there are sign-up sheets for a 15-minute consultation. And so everybody run to the back of the room and, signed up. And there was there was only one slot left, and it was 4:45 p.m. So I signed myself up. And so at 4:30, I'm sitting there waiting. And when the other person finished, I came and sat down. And the look of disgust on Dan Kennedy's face when Miss Blonde Southern gal sits down and I said, "Hi, my name is Lee Milteer," and we shook hands. And then before I could say anything else, he goes, "Well, just so you know, I really don't like working with women." And I paused and I said, "Well, that's too bad. You have 14 minutes left."
Oh, wow.
And so he spent the 14 minutes with me. He was just as delightful. And then the next person didn't show up. So I got the 5 o'clock appointment. And then at 5, he actually said, "Would you like to have dinner with me?" Because he said, "I'm just going to tell you this. 99.9% of the people who come sit here are never going to make it in this business, but you are going to make it."
Wow.
And so we developed a true lifetime friendship from that moment. And I think his wife had a little problem with that in the beginning because, here's this young person who, but it was very clear that if we're into true, Dan and I known each other in some other lifetime, and we were great friends then, and we found each other in this lifetime. Right. And we're very compatible in the way that we think, and we've done a lot of work together. I did his Renegade Millionaire series where I took 6 solid months and read everything he did, listened to every audio. I mean, there's a picture of me with this huge room of nothing but books and audio. And I remember on Christmas Eve cussing him that, "Oh my God, I'm never going to have this done by February." But I did, and we did the series, and it was great. And then he had GKIC, and he said to me one day, "I think we should do this thing called Peak Performers, where you teach people mindset, because that's the missing link in the marketing world." That the truth is there are 2 components to success. One is the technical component, where you understand how to market and you understand systems and things. But the component that's not as understood in our world is the whole mindset link and attitude and perception and dealing with failure and confidence and all that. And nobody could teach that better than you. And so Dan, Bill, and I became partners. So I was an actual partner at Glazer Kennedy. And so I did that for 9 years. And then they sold the business to a venture capitalist who, and nobody can ever say that Lee Milteer sticks around if she doesn't like you. So I was like, gotta go. Wow. And interesting how life loops around. Adam Whitty just bought the old GKIC. He called me and he said, "You were very instrumental in making me worth $35 million. So I'd really like you to come back and help other people, because you understand money, you understand performance and profitability, and you understand what the deep core reasons people succeed and fail." So I'm actually now, which I would never have expected, now working with Adam Whitty, who I adore, and Dan Kennedy, who I adore.
Yeah, I seen a bit. You were putting posts up about what is it that he races? He doesn't race horses, but he does
harness racing.
Harness racing. Yeah, I seen the pictures that you were putting up there with Dan. Anybody that is not familiar who Dan Kennedy is, or GKIC, or you gotta check him out. I mean, he's everybody's mentor of mentors, and that's a pretty incredible story of you being a part of it. And I find it interesting because one of the books that you mentioned that you had read when you were in that library was Psycho-Cybernetics. And Dan ended up purchasing that franchise, and that who's the Matt
Fury.
Yeah, Matt Fury. There you go. Yeah, because I've listened to that thing over and over and over, and a great book. The other thing I wanted, because you are one of the best trainers out there on performance and getting businesses to step into and I've got most of my people that follow are either home-based business owners, have a business, brick and mortar, wanting to get through it, whatever. What have you, over the years, what do you think is probably the most consistent thing that keeps people back from stepping into their fullest potential or being able to perform at the level that they desire? And then what that is, and then what would you recommend for them to break through that?
The number one thing that really holds people back is bad habits. Habits that they're not even conscious of having. You're very big into understanding the subconscious mind, but
Yep.
isn't it shocking to you, Jeff, that the average human being has no clarity about how they think, how their beliefs are formed, how that their self-talk is everything, the power of imagining, just programming the mind. So the average person doesn't really study the most important thing about success. You see, there are tactics in life, which is marketing. That's a tactic. That's
Right.
always changing. And most people are spending all their life on, funnels and tactics and marketing. It's not that you shouldn't do those, and systems, and you should do all those things. It's just that you got to understand they're not the fundamentals. The fundamentals in life are, first, get rid of the head trash. When you get rid of the head trash, and then you start programming in the possibility of what can you do, and you start erasing the fear and the doubt and the procrastination, then you actually just start taking action, and like miracles happen. We inherently were born with massive power.
Mm-hmm.
And our entire world thinks we are victims and that power is outside of ourselves, where power is actually inside of ourselves. And me learning this at such a young age has just made me so strong, because I actually know how to manipulate reality with my thoughts. I know how to attract things to myself. I always joke with Dan and say, you think you thought of asking me to be the peak performance coach.
Yeah, right.
You think that.
Yes, right.
And most people don't know this about Dan, but he's a very, he would never say he's metaphysical, but he really does understand mindset and the way that the brain works. And Dan and I talk a lot. We've been friends for a very long time. And he says in his books, I'm his best friend. He goes, yes, even a woman likes me. And so again, to answer your question, I think the big problem people have is the 6 inches between their ears.
Mm-hmm.
And if they would literally take charge of the caliber of information that goes in their brain and open up their mind to that you are this magnificent, powerful being, that you have the ability to manifest what you want in life by simply, one, analyzing and leveraging your skills, talents, and abilities, being relentless about programming the universe for what you want, and then scanning the landscape constantly, looking for those opportunities that match and are in alignment with what you can offer the world. Success is going to be yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not your autoresponder. That's your success.
Right. And on that note, so everybody's heard the law of attraction, put all that stuff out there. And are you familiar with spiral dynamics?
I am not.
Okay, so basically that's development of the language of development, levels of development of how we move through the things, and understanding, and you said a lot of it, the conversation that you have going on inside of your head is how do we talk to ourselves when we move through something. And the levels of development, spiral dynamics is more of how much shame holds people down from stepping into their fullest potential, the guilt, the things that they've done in the past, the stories they've told them, things for the mistakes that they've made. And like you were talking about, is in psychocybernetics, the servo serving mechanism. It's amazing how powerful that is. And then understanding the awareness, like what you were saying, is Dan thinks that he came and asked you, but you put it out there, just like your conversation going to Japan is understand. I'm listening to right now, and it's interesting we're having this conversation because right now I'm listening to the book, The Field. And have you listened to that one?
Not yet.
Yeah, and it's the other, the Intention Project or something like that. It's written by the same gal. And it just really understand that. But it's being conscious of what it is and facing what it is that gets in the way of us asking the questions to put it out there. It's like me asking you to be on the show. I've followed you for years and just putting it out there and seeing if that would be, where the alignment of what you're talking about, of getting that in. So, and I wasn't aware of how much you've done with spirituality. So I would love for you to talk more about how important, because I think for me, I'm going to say a bold statement. We probably not said this on the show before, but I think it needs to be, that conversation needs to be starting out there of how, one of the most powerful scriptures I've ever read is Matthew 18. And it's about Jesus, the disciples crying to them saying, hey, which one of us is the greatest? And Jesus takes that child, sets him on their lap, says, if you do not become like this child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. But then he goes on to say, if anyone causes this child to lose faith in me, it would be better for them to have a chain or boulder chained around their neck and drown in the depths of the sea. And I think there's a lot of religion that's doing that. There's a lot of religion that are really putting chains around people because of the beliefs that they put out there. And I get it. It's positive intention, all that stuff. It's not a value judgment in doing it. But I think so many people are held back because of their relationship or their concept of God or spirituality, whatever you want to call it. So I'd love to hear how that's such an important part of your success and what you teach others. Well,
thanks. I was brought up in Virginia as a Methodist. And let me just say this about Methodists. I think it's like the most milquetoast religion there is. Here's what I got out of being a Methodist. As long as you don't kill anybody, you're good to go. That's all I learned about being a Methodist. And I at 13, I remember thinking, this is not for me. This is stuff that people believed a long time ago. But we're in a new world, and I don't know why I should listen to a lot of stuff that's ancient. It doesn't make any sense if we're moving forward into the future. I do believe that religion for some people can be a great comfort. For me, so I studied a lot of religions because I got very interested in spirituality. And basically, I think that it's helpful for some people, but for real free thinkers like us, I think religion can have a lot of dogma and hold you back and create shame and guilt unnecessarily, because basically a lot of religions are all about control. Government and religions are about control. Right. So I don't like to be controlled. So here's spirituality. Everything is spirit. So when people think that money isn't spiritual, money is very spiritual. It is just an energy field. And I've written now, let's see, 1, 2, 3 spiritual books. I'll just share them really quickly. First book I wrote, Spiritual Power Tools for Successful Selling, where, as I told you before we started, I was pretty sure it had ended my career as I know it. I was so afraid the mainstream world would reject it, but as it turned out, people bought it by the hundreds and gave it to their clients. We still sell it like crazy. My next book was called Reclaim the Magic, where this did become a bestseller. It's a pretty hefty book. I really told everything I knew. It's called The Real Secrets to Manifesting Anything You Want. So it's about rituals. It is about the way the brain works. It is about breaking free of anything that holds you hostage. It really is about loving yourself enough to claim the magic within yourself. And then the next book I wrote, which I also shared with you, Jeff, is called The Magic of Prayers. I had no intention of writing this book, but when I wrote the spiritual book about sales, I wrote a prayer at the end of each chapter. And I got hundreds, literally, of letters that said, could you please write just a prayer book, because your prayers were so powerful. This sells about 300 to 500 copies a month. I do nothing. I don't advertise it. I do absolutely nothing. And there's no back end. Like,
wow, that's great.
I never do products that don't have a back end, but Spirit wanted this book written, and it's been written, and it's been very successful. My life is a businesswoman. I used to say businesswoman by day, metaphysician by night.
Love it.
So my real success, Jeff, came from a lot of hard work, a lot of positioning of myself, a lot of just going out there and, doing what other people would not do. But also it is because I do magic, meaning when I say magic, I mean good magic in the sense of is that I am deliberately creating my life with my thoughts, that I am projecting myself not only through visualization, mental rehearsal, seeing myself where I want to be, but that I am, like, if there's somebody I want to meet, I pray for them. I send them good thoughts. I know that they're, like Edison and Einstein said, that all brains are radio and receivers and,
Right.
broadcasters. Every audience I'm ever in, I pray for the group. I pray that my higher self works with the higher self of every person in that group. I imagine gold light flowing from the ceiling. And when I will share this with you. I will say things on stage. Oh, let me do this. I will get off stage and people will say, when you told this or said this on stage, it touched me, it changed my life, it did this, it did that. I will often go back through the recordings and I never said it.
Wow.
But what it was is because I asked my higher self to work with the higher self of the people in the audience, and that they get whatever it is they need. Their higher self dropped in while I was the dog and pony show,
Right.
Distracting their conscious mind.
Whoo, that's good. Yeah, that's good. And it's like we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And that would be an interesting, having people come up and saying that and going back through and go, I didn't even say that. Yeah.
And it happens regularly. People will say, you said this and you did that and you told this story, and I'm like, if you say so.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It wasn't me. And I do say some good stuff on stage, obviously, but I'm just I'm a heart-driven person. I believe what you sow, you're going to reap. I look for the good in people, and I do the best that I can. We all still have hiccups and problems, but I do believe, to be honest with you, there's a spiritual solution to every physical problem. And that if you go into prayer, if you go into imagining what you want, and see, because you've mentioned the law of attraction. So I loved all of the law of attraction. And I actually got to, do you know Esther Hicks from Abraham?
Oh, absolutely.
So I got to work with Esther before she was famous. One-on-one, got to work with Esther. And one of the cool things about that was, the law of attraction. The thing that doesn't talk about in the law of attraction is taking action. And I'm very big about envisioning what I want and then taking action about it, not taking action and then envisioning it. So I'm pre-paving the energetic flow of reality so that vibrationally I attract myself to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. So an interesting thing I will share with you is that I rarely go in through the front door of anything. That if I were to go to apply for a job, hypothetically, which I'm unemployable, so that's not going to happen. So if I were to apply for a job, because I had TV jobs for a while, and I've never gotten a job by here's my tape and here's my resume. The way that I've gotten everything is simply appear on a TV show, or be interviewed, or appear on stage, and then all the business comes to me. I really do not market like almost everybody markets, because I have a real attraction force that works for me. So it's easier not to go beat on their door and push the energy. It's easier for me to imagine what I want, create myself to fit that, and then take appropriate action.
It's interesting. In the higher levels of development, and basically that's what it distinguishes, is your ability to move through situations and being adaptable and things like that. And, being able to, you got a better idea, just let go of everything and just take implementation and change a whole new idea and go towards it. Because it's, for me, and it's obviously you are a very disciplined woman. You have your rituals, you do all the habits. You said it perfect. It's habits.
It's habits.
the more we are disciplined and have the cognitive awareness of what's going on here, the more awareness we have, the higher our vibration goes, the more opportunity comes to us. And it's just, I mean, if you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'm going to be meditating anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes every day, I'd said you're out of your mind.
Right. I don't have 30 or 45 minutes to do that.
Right, right. And it's just, you know, and understand, we make time for what we prioritize. And when
Yes.
you know, and I was on bipolar meds for 10 years and getting off of that. And I mean, when I got introduced to the you know, it's when I was doing my NLP stuff and they were talking about their client, they were talking about me. That wasn't me, but you know, I had all the things that, and I knew in that moment, I had to let go of this belief that I was bipolar.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And, you know, and yeah, it was a process. And I'm not a doctor. Do I play one on the internet? So I'm not suggesting that to anybody, because especially the way I did it. But getting, you know, of just letting go of that paradigm. You know, Bob Proctor talks about that a lot, of the paradigms and letting go of that. You know, and there was a thing in, I don't know if you're familiar. I'm sure you were familiar with it, the Course of Miracles.
Oh, yes.
One of the things that it talks about in there is the reason we hang on to the beliefs is because we created them.
Yes.
And I was like, wow. And it's, you know, the story, just like what you're talking about, the story and stuff like that. So I'm curious, because I've studied some Dan. I've read a lot of Dan's books. How has that dance been with him with spirituality? Because one of the books he recommended, I think it was the Greatest Little Book, or something about that, and it's a little classic book about reading the Bible. And he recommended it a long time ago.
So this is an unknown fact that Dan actually considered being a priest when he was in high school.
What?
Exactly. What? I think I probably said that more with a lot more words than what. Yeah, he considered being a priest, and he was taking Latin so he could go to be a priest. And I was like, boy, would that have been a waste of your life? So he has a deep. Dan is, you know, not just deep in marketing and human, you know, behavior and things, but he's just really like a deep guy. I feel very blessed. I feel very, very blessed to have him as my best friend. And he's always sending me little cards that say, you have no idea how much money you saved me as my personal therapist. So yeah, he does. I mean, we talk about metaphysics, we talk about spirituality. You know, he's not going to come out into the main world and be very metaphysical, but if you really look close at Dan's stuff, it's there. You can see it's there. It's a very low key weaving in and out of things about basically your belief system. I think that everyone who's, you know, having the joy of, you know, coming to your show and what you're sharing with them is you're just opening avenues and doors to them. You don't have to be locked here. Right. That the story, it was just a story. So, you know, move on, make a new story. And when I mentioned to you scripting, so I teach this, it's just it's about creating a story about your future. And you write it in the third person. So for example, I talk about, and so it was Lee Milteer. And then I just write about Lee Milteer as she's a character in a play. And I write of her perfect health and you know, how things come to her and how she's having a good time and a good marriage and she loves where she lives and she built this great house and she's doing this and she's doing that. And it's just the story that I write every morning about Lee Milteer. And most of it comes true. Because it's fine to write. Right.
And it aligns with your unconscious. Your unconscious wants to serve.
Exactly. And what I'm really doing is I'm creating a vibration of such joy when I'm writing it that I vibrate that, which attracts it to me.
Right. Right.
And so there's a famous movie, I think it's called Delirious from 1991 with John Candy. And I saw this in some hotel room about 6 months ago, and he's a writer who suddenly realizes that as he writes stories, it happens in his life.
Hmm.
And it's a wild movie, and it's very, very old. But
I love John Candy though. Yeah.
And so he should have written he would live longer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So before we go, we got about 10 minutes here, and I wanted to talk about. Could we talk a little bit about this before we got on? The 5 types of energy, and then the gift that you have for everybody. I would love for everybody, because just so go ahead and talk about these 5 energies that you talk about, and then if you want to share the gift with everybody, it'd be great.
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the main things that I teach in life is trying to get people set up to understand you have 1,440 minutes of every day. And that in that 1,440 minutes, what you have to do is you have 5 currencies that you spend every day. So you have your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial currencies. And so if you think about it, you really have to get very clear of in your currency, your mental currency. What are you thinking about? So your self-talk, on an average day, 80% of your thoughts are negative. So you're actually thinking about bad things happening to you, and you experience those because we're self-fulfilling prophecies. And so your job is in your mental currency is to clean up, do a clean sweep of the negative stuff, and really get very clear about the caliber of information that's going into your brain. Get rid of the news, get rid of the negative people that you've been hanging around with, lose the story, the victim story that you tell everybody about your boss, your in-laws, your family, your kids, blah, blah, blah. Lose it. So your whole mental energy. And then you have physical energy, of course, which is what are you feeding your body, how much you're resting your body, what are you doing on a physical level every day that enhances that physical currency that you have? Because here's the truth, the one thing that you have in life is your health. And if you're not really taking care of your health, you don't really have too much of anything. That's where real wealth is. Then there is your emotional energy. Here's the truth. You get depressed because your emotional energy is down and you're saying bad things to yourself. I'm not worthy. I'm fat. I'm getting old. I don't make enough money. There's no future for me. You think like that for 20 minutes. Trust me, you will be depressed. Mm-hmm. But you also get happy the same way. If you start thinking about emotionally, gratitude, what's good in my life, who loves me, who do I love, how can I make a difference in this world, no matter what it is. So our emotional energy affects a great deal of our success, because in your emotional energy, do you have the energy to write the sales letter? Do you have the energy to follow up with your business and do the right things? And then we have our financial energy. And so we have liabilities and we have assets. And most people never really think of life like that. But you really have to identify where are the liabilities in every currency you have, and where are your assets, and how you're spending your money, how you're investing your money, how you're making your money work for you. Are you a slave to money, or is money a slave to you? It's your relationship financially with things. And then there's, of course, the spirituality energy, which is your connection to something that is far greater than you, that can absolutely help you, can help you with intuition, can help you with your instincts, it is a healer inside of yourself. And so your day is divided amongst these currencies. Mm-hmm. And so because we don't have time to talk about that day, I have, it's called the 5 types of energy, and it's with the letters 5, F-I-V-E, typesofenergy.com. So www.5typesofenergy.com. Go there, sign up. And it's a $100 video series I sell, which I am gifting to you for absolute free because you are on Jeff's show. And one video will come a week. You're signed up, one will come a week. It's about 5 minutes long. You will find that this video would be appropriate not only for yourself, it would be appropriate for your office, your children, your teenagers. It's something that it will change the way that you view your reality of that you're a victim to life. because the 5 types of energy videos are all about you empowering yourself to direct life. You direct yourself in a way that life works better for you. Mm-hmm. So it's a gift that I'd like to give you. They play it in schools, they play it in churches, metaphysical centers, colleges. It's been out for 2 years and hundreds of thousands of people have watched it.
And yes, thank you so much for gifting that. And any training I've watched by you, it's been priceless. So I would encourage everyone to get over there and get that as soon as possible. And I can put the link in below. And then if you, Lee, have any, if you could check back like in a couple of days or whatever, and just see if anybody comments on what's going on, that would be greatly appreciated.
Sure, be happy to.
Where else can they find you? Where's it besides this incredible gift you just gave?
I have a couple of websites, but the easiest website is just milteer.com, and that's just milteer.com. And on that, I also have my Untamed TV show is on there. My blog is on there. I do Vision Quest. I have peak performers. I do one-on-one coaching, and I also do Vision Quest days in my home with people. So Google me. I'm easy to find.
Yes, you are. Yes, thank you so much. And if possible, I'd love to have you come back on because I know there's a ton more stuff we could have talked about.
Sure, I'd love that. That would be great. It'd be fun.
Thank you so much for being here, and everybody. Be sure to check in next week, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've got an amazing guest next week. She's a New York realtor. She's right across the street from Donald Trump's skyscraper in New York, and she's got some incredible stories. Super excited to have her on. And again, Lee, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a great night and be blessed and live like your life depends on it, because it does.
It does. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Good night.